See this? This the kingpin, all right? And he the man. You get the other dude's king, you got the game. But he trying to get your king too, so you got protected.
This famous scene in episode 3 of The Wire has a gang member, D'Angelo, teaching another two low-level gang members, Bodhi and Wallace, how to play the game of chess. Following this moment, the themes and principles of chess then discreetly recur throughout the whole course of the show as a unique way of visually representing the status and nature of its characters. It also goes without saying that my interpretation is really just that, and not necessarily intended by the creators. In this scene, one of the higher-up members of the Barksdale gang, Stinkum, is making his way around to the entrance of one of their stash houses. Now, this also, again, could have been completely unintentional, but we see Stinkum here move a short way towards the corner, then round it, and then make a lengthier journey towards the entrance of the stash house. And on the surface, this mimics the L-shaped way that a knight would move in chess. Now, by itself, this doesn't really demonstrate anything. A guy just walked around a corner. So allow me to continue. The camera then lingers on Stinkum for a short while, and slowly zooms in on him from a diagonal perspective. And this creates the feeling of being watched or approached by something. Perhaps, for example, by a bishop. This feeling is then confirmed in the following scene, where Omar suddenly storms the safe house, and we see that Stinkum has been easily captured. The whole scene serves as a good first representation of chess symbolism, as we see how two different characters embody the properties of different chess pieces, through the ways in which they physically move or conduct themselves. Stinkum was oblivious to Omar's attack until it happened, which seems to follow this idea of Stinkum being a knight, which has less range than a bishop, meaning that Omar could stalk him out from afar without Stinkum realizing or being able to properly defend himself. This also introduces the concept of power levels, in which Stinkum is a less powerful piece than Omar, due to lacking the experience and craftiness that Omar has developed throughout his many years in the game. Next up, we have the pawns. In this scene, Bodhi and Poot are given orders to kill Wallace, one of their closest friends. It's clear that they're not exactly happy to have to do this, but in this game, snitches, just like pawns.
They get capped quick.
In a loose representation, Wallace, Bodhi, and Poot are all on the same row of the board. Bodhi and Poot are wanting to move up the board and advance their position, whereas Wallace is wanting to leave the game entirely. In this situation, Wallace essentially needed to be sacrificed in order for Bodhi and Poot to make their way up the board. The necessity of this sacrifice can be visualized through this opposing pawn here. Pawns are always restricted in their movement, only ever able to move forward 1 or 2 squares at a time. And because they can only move forward, they usually find there's something in their way, stopping them from progressing. Which in this case would be Stringer having asked them to take out Wallace. If they were to ignore Stringer's orders, then it's likely they wouldn't be able to progress, or even possibly get taken out themselves. Because of this, we can see Wallace's death as a pawn sacrifice, and this is because his death moves the obstacle, Stringer's test of loyalty for them, out of the way, allowing them to progress up the board. Furthermore, in the lead up to this sacrifice, we see the boys moving through Wallace's apartment, and this creates a fairly claustrophobic kind of feeling, with Poot looking back, fairly reluctant to move up the stairs with Bodhi, but eventually reconciles when Bodhi beckons him on. And this adds to the idea of the boys being pawns, because pawns also have no freedom of movement. Poot's reluctance to go up the stairs here seems to imply that he does have a choice, but is reminded by Bodhi that he is also locked into the game, and is only really able to move forwards because finding a life for themselves outside of the game would arguably be quite difficult. I found this next clip to be particularly fascinating with regards to chess symbolism. In this scene, Omar is trying to bait Avon, the king, out of hiding. Eventually he succeeds, and Avon leaves the security of his establishment and ventures outside. Omar then begins making his way to Avon to carry out his attack, but is interrupted by Weebay. Avon then quickly deduces the trap he's fallen into and dives into cover. Following a brief shootout, Omar is wounded and forced to retreat. Before discussing the chess symbolism, some key things about the cinematography here. Firstly, the scene is shot from Omar's perspective, which is similar to the previous scene in which Omar was stalking out Stinkham and the stash house. However, in this scene, Omar is visible, and while this doesn't make him any less intimidating or capable, it does serve to reduce the mystery and surprise of his eventual attack, and foreshadows Avon's deduction and subsequent escape, as if Avon can see Omar himself. Going back to the earlier comparison of Omar being a long-range chess piece like a bishop, we can see that Avon is directly in front of Omar, but instead of heading straight for Avon, Omar instead chooses to move diagonally towards him, starting by moving towards the wall at an angle. Omar is only likely doing this for some kind of positional advantage, like placing himself in between Avon and his establishment, to try and prevent him from escaping. But it is interesting that this happens to mirror the behaviour of a bishop. You could also see Omar as a queen in this situation, and in general, as the queen is considered the most lethal and effective piece in the game. So is Omar considered in the same way, as his name is so feared in the streets. This would better resemble Omar's movements on screen, as he does make his way towards the wall and then make a short journey forwards before getting into a position to attack Avon. Weebei's arrival into this scene then continues the chess symbolism in several ways. Firstly, Weebei's jovial demeanour in this scene confirms Avon's suspicions that he may be falling into a trap. As you might expect, at the highest levels of chess, players are required to calculate as many moves ahead as they humanly can, and so it seems significant here that Avon, being at the highest level of his particular game, is here calculating so many moves ahead in order to prevent himself from falling into a trap. Omar attacking Avon in this situation can also be seen as a check, which is of course when a king is threatened by an opposing piece. To negate this check and prevent checkmate, either the king needs to move away from the check, or another piece needs to block or defend against the attack on the king. Both of these things happen in this situation. As Omar fires upon Avon, the check, Avon ducks into cover, the king moves out of check, and then Weebei attacks Omar from around the corner. Coincidentally, Weebei does this in an L-shaped way, by popping out to the side of the corner, say, 1 square to the right, and then shooting at longer range towards Omar 2 squares down, taking out the threat on the king.